deeply saddened. He had tried hard to please his father, whom he loved and respected. But now there was no choice. Music would be his destination in life, and in his superb song, To Music, the young composer expressed these feelings. Invited Schubert to share his small apartment. It was a modest home, but here at last he could devote himself completely to his composing. He wrote with incredible speed, sometimes 7 or 8 songs within a single day. Whatever Schubert created, works for orchestra, chamber music, or piano, the melodies came straight from his gentle and loving heart. They echoed the whispering of the leaves, the trills of the birds, the murmur of the little brook. One of his songs that became famous all over the world is called The Trout. Schubert himself liked it so well that he used it as a theme with variations for piano and strings, calling the work the Trout Quintet. As it seems, we know that during Schubert's lifetime, the public hardly understood his wonderful music, and he himself was much too modest to fight for recognition. Walking through the streets of Vienna, he would often see Beethoven, who was revered as the greatest living composer. But rarely did the shy young man ever meet the master in person. In many musical ideas, he did not agree at all with Beethoven, and he spoke of some of Beethoven's music as eccentric. However, this was not true all the time, and there was much music which Schubert loved. In fact, some years later, he was pleased to write his famous octet to be played as a companion piece for Beethoven's septet. With his compositions, Schubert went from one publisher to another, hoping to raise some money. But all he received was about a florin for a piece which later would be sold in millions of copies. There were times of bitter poverty. The young composer might have suffered from hunger and cold had not his faithful friends helped him. They knew that he was a genius. They believed in his future. And to prove it before all the world, they proudly called themselves the Schubertians. There were artists, poets, and musicians among these young people. Many of Schubert's most famous works had their first performance in this circle. Among his friends, Schubert appeared to be gay and carefree, always ready for fun and for outings to the Vienna woods in the horse-drawn coach filled with a happy crowd. At parties, he often played his own pieces for the dancing couples, longingly watching them. But deep inside, he suffered from spells of sad loneliness, feelings which are expressed in some of his sweetest melodies. It was as though Schubert knew that he would be a wanderer on this earth, for a short time only. Several years before, he had written a song called The Wanderer, which told of the struggle and unrest of the poetic soul. Now, in his more mature period, Schubert transformed the theme of this song into his most brilliant piano work, The Wanderer Fantasy. By the age of 30, the many disappointments of his career and the struggle to win the reputation he so richly deserved had undermined his health. Yet the magic gift of his inspiration never abated. In 1822, Schubert started on a symphony and wrote the first two movements in almost feverish haste. Then he laid the manuscript aside to finish it later. But this was not to be. Forever, This immortal work will be known as the Unfinished Symphony. Weakened by sickness, the young composer created still another masterpiece, his last one, the Great Symphony in C major. In the summer months of the year 1828, Schubert completed his last large work, the Mass in E-flat major. Many of his friends felt that it was written in an attempt to impress the church authorities so that he might be given money or steady employment. But it was a hopeless attempt, for in November of that year, Franz Schubert died, not yet 32 years old. His last wish was to be buried next to Beethoven, his idol, at whose funeral he had been a pallbearer only a year before. Schubert did not leave any worldly property, a pitiful sum of money and a bundle of manuscripts which were auctioned off for almost nothing. Only much later was their true value realized, and they became priceless museum pieces. Today, Schubert's pure and charming melodies are known and loved by the whole world, and the former little choir boy is counted among the greatest of the great composers.